Hello, welcome to school year 2021-2022 and welcome to our class Creative Nonfiction. Today I'm going to discuss to you lesson 1, which is Introduction to Literature, a review on literary genre. So, since this lesson is only a review, we have to go back to our previous lesson in creative writing and in the Introduction to Literature. And it starts with a definition of what literature is. I know you already know the meaning of literature, but then again, let us go back for the sake of review. So, according to Burnett et al. In 2003, literature features human experiences that are seen as fleeting moments caught by the eye of a creative one. So, again, when we say it features human experiences, when we study literature, we're actually studying human experiences. Okay? A captured human experiences which an artist write in a piece of paper for us to study. Then literature develops people to share a magnitude of deep sensibility and information. Now, what does that mean? According to Jacobus in 1996, when we study literature, we develop to share a magnitude of deep sensibility and information. Okay, so when we study literature, we're actually, as I've said a while ago, we're studying human experiences. And by studying human experiences, we share their emotion. We share their experiences, their feeling, the way they live their life. It gives us an idea on how other people live their life, what are their pains, what are their joys, and everything. So we're basically studying other people's lives as we study literature, and by doing that, we are developing a strong connection towards them. We become sensitive towards other people's emotion, other people's feelings, because we already know how they live and what their cultures are and other factors that influences their life. It gives us ability to speak directly to them as it nourishes people's emotional lives. You know, whether you like it or not, based on your experiences, we have learned that by studying literature, by studying stories, lives of other people, we become emotional and we learn a lot from them. And as we learn, we are nourishing not only our brain, our knowledge, but we are also nourishing our emotional aspect of our humanity. It makes us more human as we share the emotions of other people. The characters that the writers create, it mirrors a portion of humanity, making many to laugh, teary-eyed, or scared, or even dream, or even think, or shout, or be angry towards characters' action and life circumstances. Literature widens how people view the world. That's the best thing about studying literature. It's because you are not confined to the four corners of your room, but your mind travels across countries around the globe. See, by reading books, by reading stories, you are learning the different lives of other people who are living in China, who are living in America and Russia, in Ireland, in any other part of the world. And not only about these people, we also learn about their country, their environment, their weather, everything that they live. We share it with them as if we experience it, even though we are only sitting on our four corners of our room, but we travel. Okay, so that's how powerful literature is, and that's how we connect to other people just by reading book, but just by reading stories. It widens our worldview. It makes us understand why these people makes this statement, why they decide this way, why they act this way, why they look this way, and why they live the way they live. And that makes us more understanding about that makes us aware of their way of living. Thus, it widens our view of the world. Now, in literature, it is classified into fiction and nonfiction. In this semester, we're going to study nonfiction. But before we're going to tackle nonfiction, we're going to review the fiction first, because we have to make sure that we understand everything, all the elements of fiction before we jump into our lesson in nonfiction. Now, so let's review the definition of fiction. Okay, fiction is a product from the imagination, but it has truthfulness in it. Its events are carved from truth, thereby exhibiting the faithfulness of reality. Although fiction is a product of imagination, you say, however, fiction is based from reality. It is anchored on reality, because we cannot just create something in our mind from scratch. It has to be from somewhere in your subconsciousness. It has to be taken from a real life experiences, either your own or something that you observed in your environment. That is why there is always truthfulness in every fiction. Now, let's say, for example, if you have seen the movie Avatar by James Cameron, everything in that movie is fictional, from the characters to the world. Imagine there are floating mountains and people that you actually haven't seen in your entire life, because they are fictional. They are only a product of imagination. But if we're going to study deeper about where these things came from, they are actually based on something. Just like, for example, the scenario, the floating mountains, the world, the Pandora itself. No, it is basically inspired by scenery in China. There are mountains, there are rock gardens in China that are so beautiful that it resembles Pandora. The only difference is that the mountains in China does not float. They do not float, but Pandora, there are twists of imagination in it. That's why you can see the mountains are floating, but the scenery is totally identical. And even in the interview, in a Hollywood interview with James Cameron, he said that they were inspired by the rock garden in China when they made the world of Pandora. So see, that's one example of what I'm saying a while ago, that it is constructed based on reality. Fiction, although it's a product of imagination, it is constructed, it is built on reality. It has something to do with the real world. Okay, and another thing is that the struggles of the people in that world, although they are a product of imagination, but the way they act, the way they think, the way they respond is basically the same way human beings think, act, and respond. In the setting, the plot, and how the entire story goes is basically symbolic. If we're going to study that deeper, we are going to realize that there is really truthfulness in it. And if you remember in our lesson in creative writing, in our literature class in the second semester last year, we learned that there is a way to interpret literature, and that first one is the mimetic theory. Remember that in mimesis, Plato believed that literature is a copy of reality, a reality twice removed. So if we're going to look into that, if we're going to consider that definition, we can come up with an idea that everything that you see and everything that you read in a piece of literature is basically a copy of reality. We are only mirroring reality into a piece of literature. Okay, example, how did a writer put the theme poverty is not a hindrance to success in a piece of literature? See? So although there are so many ways to write and there are so many ways to interpret and to present that theme into a story, in the form of story, it's up to the reader to interpret the meaning, and that's where we use symbols. Okay, symbols that we can see in story, and we can connect that symbol into reality. Okay, so I hope you still remember that, because we have an activity later on that will review your knowledge about the mimetic theory, if you still remember that. Okay, fiction can be expressed in the form of short story, or it can be in the form of novel, or it can be in the form of film. Okay, if I think we're going to discuss later the difference between a short story and a drama and a novel or a film. Okay, before we go on, let us review first the term canon. Okay, the term canon stems from the Greek notifying measure or law or rule. It therefore pertains to the study of the Bible book. If you are a Catholic believer, and probably you have heard already the term canon law. Okay, so it is a study of the Bible books. Canon is viewed as a set of authors, and therefore respective works are claimed to be classics. Okay, now let's go to the different what you call this. A while ago, fiction can be expressed. We talked about fiction can be expressed in the form of short story, novel, and drama. So we're going to define this, and let's talk this one by one. Let's start with short story. Okay, so short story is a concise prose that is shorter than a novel, with few characters to portray. Now, remember this: a short story covers only one theme and a very one setting. It has limited characters, and it only has one conflict. Okay, so there's a difference between a short story and a novel, because the novel has many conflicts. The plots are complicated. It has multiple settings, and it's really way too long. But do not be confused, because there are short stories that are actually long. The way the writer writes the story, it's quite lengthy, but it does not mean that it's no longer a short story because it's lengthy. Okay, so it just became lengthy because of the number of words that the writer used. The writer is very creative in using words, so that's why it becomes lengthy. But as long as there is only one conflict, limited setting, and one theme, then we can still consider that as a short story. Okay, short story may run from 750 to 1,500 words, but sometimes more, but not more than 7,500 words. Okay, so short story involves a single effect in one or more important scenes. It has a concise narration and deleting a complicated plot or storyline. Okay, characters are introduced in action and in dramatic effect. Okay, There are different elements of short story that we have to consider, and I think this is only a review. Again, since this is a review, I'm expecting that you're already familiar with this. However, I'm still going to discuss this one by one for the sake of our activity later on. Okay, so the different elements of the short story starts with character. Okay, character can be a person, an animal, talking or taking action of the story. Sometimes the characters are non-human objects like plants or animals, and they are basically portrayed as human through the use of personification. Okay, but most of the time, characters are human being. Okay, so this human being actually serves as people that are giving life to the story. They're doing the action, they have dialogues and everything. Okay? So next is the setting. Setting brings the reader as where the story happens, which is illustrated through scenery, landscape, building, weather, or season. So you might want to be very which was detailed about describing the setting. It does not only include the place. Sometimes when I ask the student, "What's the setting of the story?" They will answer me, "The setting takes place in the market." Okay, and that's it. But that is not how you're going to describe the setting. You have to describe the market. Okay, the market is this messy. The roads are wet. There are a lot of people chit-chatting. There are a lot of vendors. The weather is what? Cloudy, sunny, or is it rainy? So you have to, be very specific and be very detailed about describing the setting that includes basically the entire scenery, the entire landscape, the building, including the weather and the season. Okay. Next element of a short story that we have to be familiar with is the plot. The plot leads to the central conflict by building a series of events in the character's life. So if you remember the traditional plot in a short story, it starts with an introduction, or how do we call that? You introduce the character, and then there's a conflict, and then there's a rising action, and there's a climax, then there's a falling action, and there's a denouement. Okay, that's basically the traditional pyramid plot. But there are other strategies or other literary device that used to enhance the plot, like the foreshadowing. It gives the reader an idea of what is going to happen next, or there's a flashback in which we're going to go back into the previous experiences of characters, or we're going to go back to the past. Or there's also what we call in medias res. In medias res is a type of plot wherein it starts with the middle and it goes back to the beginning and till the ending. Most epics are basically written with the use of in medias res. Okay? And there's conflict. The fourth element in a short story, very important, is the conflict. It's the problem of the story. It's where the character wrestles with another character, or sometimes against nature, or against force, or against society, or sometimes against oneself. Conflict is basically the problem, okay, the problem of the story. That's why we cannot build a very good story without a good conflict. We have to find a very good conflict to develop a very good story. Then theme. The theme is the central idea or concept of the storyline. It's basically the truth that we take from reality and what we're going to present in a story. Okay, theme are usually universal truth. Okay, example for that is poverty is not a hindrance to success. Love conquers all, and what else? goodness always prevail against evil. Okay, very, very, what you call this, common theme that we're going to present in a story. So while reading the whole story, it dwells around a specific central idea, and that's what we call the theme. Okay, so I think that's everything to discuss or on the literary genre. The next thing that we're going to do is basically an assignment. This is what you're going to submit to me on the when you are going to return your module. Okay, so your activity is the following. You're going to read the short story entitled "The Witch" by Edilberto K. Tiempo. I'm going to post the link or a copy of, or a soft copy of the story "The Witch" by Edilberto K. Tiempo. You're going to write a comprehensive literary review. So I'm going to check if you still remember our lesson in the previous semester and you're so familiar with the different literary theories that we're going to use in literary review. So these are the questions that you are going to answer, okay, or these are the guide questions as you are going to write your literary review. You're going to write this in a piece of paper. It could be a bond paper or you can use a yellow paper and then submit it to me during the returning of your modules. Okay, so number one, give a detailed characterization of the lead characters. Now, when you give the detailed characterization, it says detailed. So do not just give me name. So who are the characters? Do not just give me Pedro, Juan, and Edilberto. Give me characterization. What kind of person is Juan? What was he doing? What was he like? Okay. Then, second, provide a detailed description of the setting. I already discussed this a while ago. Do not just give me an answer like the setting takes place in the market. You have to give me a detailed description as to where the story happens. Or you're going to draw based on how you have visualized it. Okay? You do not need to actually draw. That's very probably you're going to think of it as a literal draw, but it's not draw. You're going to draw it from your imagination. How you see the things, the setting in your imagination, and then you're going to describe it in letters. Okay? So you write your answer in a form of essay or in a form of paragraphs. Identify the main conflict. What's the real problem in the story? And then write your reaction to it. Or what can you say about the conflict? What can you say about the problem presented by the writer in the story? Okay, just give me the conflict and then afterwards you give your personal reaction to it. Okay? Then identify the theme of the story and write a mimetic analysis about it. Okay, so in number 4, okay, you might have wondered as to how you're going to write a mimetic theory. In the previous semester, I already told you, I taught you in how to do this one, but this time you're going to review. I'm going to check if you still remember it. Okay, so identify the theme of the story, state the theme of the story, and then the mimetic analysis. Again, the mimetic analysis, you're going to establish a connection between the story and reality, and you do comparative essay. You compare the story and then reality. What are the similarities? I'm sorry. What are the similarities between the story and the real world? Okay, so that's what you're going to write in question number 4. Okay, if you still have further question or clarification, you are free to ask questions. Send me a message on Facebook, or you can text me or call me if you don't understand anything that I'm saying here, or you can leave a comment on this video. Okay, so that's it for today. Thank you very much and see you on the next lesson. Goodbye.